Dice up there for you guys. Going to be talking about how the collapse is underway. I think silver is a good identifier of the collapse as the dollar issues take place and people are looking for the safe haven. The dollar is now failing into the idea that people need to get out of it, and they're moving into silver, getting out of bonds, going into the safe haven places where they know that they can protect themselves from the economic fallout. Now, this is something that you would hear a lot on, say, the conspiratorial mindsets of the people out there who are really trying to share some information that's going to sell you on the idea of buying into silver or getting out of the dollar. And they're going to push these ideas in such a way that makes you feel as if the Federal Reserve has failed, the government has failed, and this is an unfortunate consequence of a lot of the people's misunderstanding of how it is that the Federal Reserve is really truly trying to conduct themselves. Now, don't get me wrong, they're not going to do you any favors, right? But it's not the way that a lot of people want to give it the, I don't know, like that conspiratorial mindset of them trying to create the pain and suffering so that you don't have a good existence. Like, this is what a lot of people would put out there. And I just don't see it this way. Like, I've backed off on the idea of a conspiratorial mindset so that I could look at it in a clear fashion. One that says, this isn't good, this isn't bad, it's just the way it is, and I need to figure out what it is that I need to do to conduct myself within it. Now, as I started to research and study the Federal Reserve and their monetary policy, something came up that I thought was quite interesting. Now, most people understand the Federal Reserve lowers interest rates to stimulate the economy, raise interest rates to restrict the economy, not much else that you really need to know about it. When they lower interest rates, print money, that's inflationary. When they raise rates, they are trying to slow the inflationary pressure down. Here they have this communication out there that they are very concerned about the jobs numbers that are out there. And so people are looking at that saying, oh gosh, all this unemployment that's going to start ripping through the economy is going to force the Federal Reserve into lowering interest rates. But at the same time, we have an inflationary expectation and inflationary pressure that is quite elevated, that then has a whole other group of people out there saying, no, the Federal Reserve shouldn't be cutting rates. In fact, they should be raising rates to deal with the inflationary pressure. All this confusion is about enough to rip your hair out. And if most people look at some of the things that are being said from the politicians, they are really confused about what it is that's going on with monetary policy. So I'm going to try and clear it up as best I can for you. And I have been sharing this information for quite some time on this channel in a way that I believe and feel that the working class individual can make the most use of it. Now, to understand that we as a working class individual were the backbone of this economy. There was a time when we worked hard for our earnings, our wages, took our wages, went out there into the economy, raised families, bought stuff, did all the wonderful things that people would expect to happen within the economy, and that was happening within the working class people. However, if you notice now, the economy doesn't really seem to have the working class individual in mind. I mean, there's plenty of people who talk about it. Oh, what is it that the people are going to do with their wages that don't keep up, and, unemployment sucks, and, insurances are all expensive in every direction. And people say, oh, what is it that's going to happen for these people? What is it that we could possibly do to support these people? What is it that we're going to do to bring the working class back? And I think to myself, that's not an option. That's not an option. Like, the more I study this stuff, the more I recognize what it is that we are doing here within our economy, going back to the way it was with a good, strong middle class, working hard, producing great stuff, sending that stuff out there to the world, and then raising our standard of living. That's not an option here anymore. And now as people get very upset with this idea, they want to turn off the video. They're like, well, I'm going to go find somebody else who's going to feed a line that's going to be much more encouraging on saving the system. And I think to myself, they're going to lie. That's going to be a lie. There is nothing that you can do to reverse matters into the way that it used to be. This is a cyclical thing, and it's on a particular direction. And now I've shared the information so many times on this channel that I feel like I'm the YouTube authority on the Cantillon effect. But once you start to recognize the Cantillon effect from the words that he had used hundreds of years ago, and then see those words playing out today. Now, granted, he was talking about horses and wagons and stuff like that, and today we have cell phones and airplanes. But when you recognize the underlying economic force that's playing out with the ever-increasing amounts of new money that comes in, separates the rich from the poor, drives out the ever-increasing amounts of domestic manufacturers, and brings in ever-increasing amounts of foreign production, this is what's occurring here, right? We don't have to reinvent the wheel. We can just say, man, there's just another cycle taking place that we have to recognize what our position is inside of it. And this is where I think a lot of times people begin to fail. Like, the collapse is underway. It's been underway for quite some time. And as people are like, well, I'm going to buckle down and wait for the storm to pass over so that we have better times in the future. And I'm thinking, nope, you're going to miss it, man. You're not positioning yourself accordingly. Waiting for this to pass over is not a position. I mean, it's a position, don't get me wrong. It's not a position that's going to do well. I mean, maybe, I don't know. What do I know? Maybe it'll do well for you. But most likely, you're probably not going to do well. The people who are going to do well are the asset holders, right? See, there was a time when the working class could do well. In fact, it was awesome, right? It was really awesome, because this is how awesome it could be. You could graduate high school and just go get an average job. Right? With that average job, it would have been enough to get an apartment, get a house. You might have even been able to get a decent life out of it with like retirement and stuff like that. And you didn't really have to have like any kind of real particular awesome skills or anything like that. You just had to become dedicated and, learn your job and do it well and showed up every day and be safe. And that was it. That was like literally the limitations of what it is that you needed to do in order to make it. Now, that's not going to necessarily be the same story, right? And so here in the United States, when we had jobs that were just fairly easy to make it with, like anybody could just go out there, get a job and do it, that's not the case today. And so people are working incredibly hard to acquire a position inside of their life in which that they think that they are going to be able to earn enough money to have that decent way of life, and then only to find as time goes on, it deteriorates further and further away. And they're wondering, what is it that they can do? Right? What is it that they can do inside of their efforts, their skills, their time, in order to acquire that standard of living that would be appropriate for what would have been considered the American dream, right? And these people are not understanding that as time goes on, it's going to get ever increasingly more difficult because they're trying to make their job work. Their job doesn't work anymore like it used to. Like the job back in the day when we were the manufacturing powerhouse, producing all the wonderful, great things and sending that out there to the world, and the world was sending us their money, that gave us a position within the economy to have a regular average job and be able to use that average job to benefit you in a very self-sustaining, fairly decent way of existence. Today, that has moved on. It doesn't work like that anymore. And now a lot of people get very upset with this, but to me, I think about it, it's just like, just because our day jobs aren't enough to cut it anymore, doesn't mean that there is not massive opportunities in order to acquire a position in which that you are going to do much better in. And that is asset allocation, right? You have to get into assets. Your job is not going to be enough. Your skill level, you leveling up your skills is going to be a benefit. It's going to help, but it's not going to do it. It's not going to be enough, right? And so as your skills level up, you're going to find that that job is going to deteriorate. It's going to be like, think about it. A good job not too long ago was no longer a good job today. Right? And, used to say, well, my old man used to, he was a carpenter and he did all the, framing for, the area around here. And he was just a framer his entire life. And he was able to raise 4 kids and have a retirement and do all that other stuff. That was back in the day. You can't trade that for the same experience today. All right? And so you're not going to be able to just work that job. But if you work your day job and you work a side hustle and you have the mindset that you are going to take your money, cut back on your expenses, deploy that to a secure rate of interest beyond that of your occupation, you might actually be able to move up onto the other side of the wedge. And this is an unfortunate situation we now face. The collapse is underway. You're not going to stop it. right? And that's the scariest part for a lot of people. And it's something that I've been trying to share for a long time here on this channel is that when you look to politicians to save it, or then look to a politician for blame, that's the other part of it. It was just like, if you're looking to blame somebody, then you're not looking to what it is that you can do. You're like, oh, it's their fault. If I was doing my thing normally and they didn't exist, then everything would have been hunky-dory. And now what that is going to do is deny you the ability to then position yourself accordingly. Yeah, they suck. Everybody sucks around. Nobody makes the right decision. They're never going to make the right decision. The only thing that I can do is complain about it, or look at it for what it is and then realize what it is that I need to do in order to conduct myself. I don't like the idea of having to do as much as I do in order to make it through my life. I understand it's difficult, but I actually enjoy a lot of what it is that I'm doing. But to think about it, I wish, totally wish, that there was a way that my job, my day job, was enough, and that nothing else would need to be done. And that would provide everything I need, from the health insurance to the retirement to the vacations to everything that I would need to have a decent way of existence, and that would be enough. I wish it was that way. It's not going to be that way. It's not going to be that way going into the future, and there's really nothing that can be done to create that sort of environment. And the people who believe that it's going to happen are very delusional. They have great ideas, don't get me wrong. Like, they articulate these wonderful experiences that could come, right? They say, oh, look at this UBI and MMT and all these wonderful things. And I'm thinking to myself, every time I hear somebody speak of this, they do not include what it is that is going to happen from the ever-increasing amounts of new money that pours into the system. The Cantillon effect will take place, guaranteed. It's already happening. You can't stop it. The collapse is underway. Okay? And once you see it, then you can recognize what it is that you need to do about it. And this is the hardest part. This is why I'm constantly sharing with you guys the idea of the credible threat theory. The credible threat theory is by far the best way to understand what it is that's happening with monetary policy and what's going on within the economy. The credible threat theory really breaks down to its detailed, like, I don't even know how to describe how detailed it is when it comes to describing what it is that the Federal Reserve was experiencing, how the problems they were facing was going to create a monetary policy that would not be effective on stimulating the economy in any way, shape, or form. If we fell into a recession, they were in desperation. And that desperation was for higher inflation and inflation expectations. And most people will start pulling their hair out, not understanding what that means. They want to blame the Federal Reserve for creating inflation. And then I think to myself, that's exactly what the Federal Reserve was stating that they need the people to believe in order to conduct monetary policy appropriately. And that blows the people's minds. They cannot grasp that. I mean, even people who are high-level economists, CEOs of banks and stuff like that, will not understand what it is that I have tried to share with the people through the Fed's own words. And this is it's absolutely crazy to think. But when I share the credible threat theory with people and they internalize the information that I have shared, they are absolutely blown away. They can see it. It gives them that aha moment. They finally look at it and go like, man, this clears up everything. And then I think to myself, I know, right? How is it that it is not out there for more people to understand? And then I thought about it again. If it was out there for people to understand, it wouldn't work and it wouldn't exist and it would completely fall apart. We literally are less than 1% of the people who have gained this knowledge. And I'm not trying to say that I'm some super genius who figured it out. It was literally pieced together over the course of the last 7 years from the organic conversation built from this channel. That's where it came from. That's why I know it's right. That's why I know it's real. It's because everything else is propagandized information that was force-fed into the people. We are the few out here on the internet who is sharing what it is that the Federal Reserve is doing from their own words. And somebody says they're lying. And I think to myself, to who? Who are they lying to? Nobody. Literally nobody shares the information that the credible threat theory has. This is the words coming from the Federal Reserve. Nobody is sharing it. Nobody knows about it. Who could they possibly be lying to? The uneducated economist? Like they put all these speeches together just so they could lie to me personally? And then I would turn around and share that lie with 1,000 other people? And nobody else would know about that? Does that seem like, I mean, I'm pretty I hate to say, I'm full of myself, right? You know, I kind of have a high level of narcissism, but I really doubt that the Federal Reserve put together speeches and documents to confuse the uneducated economist. I mean, I'm seriously doubting that would be the case. And so I doubt that the information that I have gathered that doesn't seem to be present in anybody else's theories or communications out there on the internet or on news or anywhere else must be hidden from the normal narrative out there that people have been delivered. We here on The Uneducated Economist have absolutely dialed it in. Monetary policy strategies for a low neutral interest rate world exposed it all. Nobody heard it, nobody's seen it. A speech that was delivered literally years before the COVID pandemic kicked in, begging for higher inflation and inflation expectation. Tell me it wasn't delivered. Right? There's a link down in the description to the UE University where you can gain all the information that I have used to develop the credible threat theory. The course is a set of about 12 documents with highlighted marks in it that really, if you internalize these particular documents, you will see it. If you take it in its entirety, you will see the low neutral interest rate being the major problem for the Federal Reserve. The fact that they cannot stimulate the economy because they will not be able to get far enough below neutral before running into the lower bound of zero. The desperation for elevated inflation and inflation expectation to pull the neutral interest rate higher is exactly what we are experiencing here in the economy today. And every single time you see these credible threats of tariffs or war or everything else that's going on, and don't get me wrong, it's not fake. People really die. But it definitely is a push to try and get people to behave in a particular way. Then it never happens. You think about it, how much warning did they give Venezuela? Huh? See, if you're going to do something, you just go do it. But if you want people to behave, if you want to manipulate them, if you want to alter the expectations, then you throw out credible threats. And we recognize it all the time. Every single day I'm out here and I'm sharing the ideas of what it is that the credible threat theory has found, and I'm sharing those ideas with the people out there who are then internalizing this stuff and recognizing, man, this stuff is accurate. Very accurate. All right, moving on. Grocery stores are empty. Gas stations are nuts. Are they? The collapse is underway. All right, no one has researched. No, Cordovan, Russian economist. Damn you, low inflation rates. Damn you. I love deplorable. All right. Our economic woes are based on our instincts of animal, or at least, where are my glasses? Hold on a second. I can't read anything. All right. At least animals don't create inflation when giving money. They don't. Animals give money? I didn't know that. People took their dollars and swept out stores. Those holding dollars are wondering, oh, WTF. All right, you're getting snow this week out west. Yeah, that's what I hear. It was kind of cold this morning. Yep, you call out COVID in 2020. All right. Very nice. Corn-fed. I like to hold physical dollars for super fast liquidity. Right on, all-nighter. It's great to see you up in here. All right. Stock indices, metals, Bitcoin, land, houses, chickens. Holding dollars is for people either too rich or don't care about inflation. Well, and I think I agree somewhat with all-nighter in the sense that if you have dollars in hand, then you have, like, money talks. Right? Cash is king. Somebody comes up and says, hey man, I got this thing for sale. It's $1,000. And it was just like, yeah, I got 750. Eh? No? Okay. And he's walk away from, oh, hey, hold on. Right. Because cash talks, man, right? Cash in hand. Not something that was just like, well, I'll give you something now, I'll give you something in the future. No, man, cash on hand right now. This is the only way that you can really take advantage of buying opportunities is to have the cash available at that moment. So cash is good for that. Right? Cash is good for doing the transaction. Cash is good for a ability to transfer goods and services for other goods and services. And if you understand it for that purpose, then you can use it for it. But if you're trying to store value inside of dollars, then you are really trying to do something that is not going to do. Like people say, well, it's designed to do that. No, it's not. I don't know who said that was, right? I mean, people have that idea that it was supposed to be designed to do that, but that's not what it does. It doesn't do that, right? It transfers goods and services for other goods and services. And if you want it to be store of value, then you have to transfer it to something that's going to store the value, right? Like those of us who understood that if we position ourselves into silver, we're most likely going to be able to position ourselves outside of that third party claim. And by positioning ourselves into silver and then watching silver run up as much as it does, we are now sitting in a way that we have been able to protect our purchasing power, right? By putting that dollars into silver. Now, is it always going to work that way? No, you have to be very vigilant on where it is that you are putting those dollars, right? Just because you put it into silver doesn't mean it's always going to protect you. You put it into silver today and you may find here in a few weeks it's at $80 or $50 or who knows where it's going to be because silver is incredibly volatile. Same thing with Bitcoin. But if you are very aware of the situation and you are paying attention to what you are doing and you notice that, hey, today the Bitcoin price seems to be a bit lower than it has been, it might not be a bad idea to take some of your dollars and dollar cost average into a Bitcoin position. Not all of it, not 100%, that's kind of foolish, but to dollar cost average into that to somewhat protect your purchasing power and to be outside of the dollar position, right? Like, just take it reasonably. Just understand it for what it is. And don't try to make it something that it isn't. Don't try to blame it for something that is evil. I mean, you can do whatever you want. I don't care. But that's not what I do. I don't blame anybody or anything for anything that's going on out there other than my understanding of the situation and what I have done to conduct myself. Yeah, wars break out. People act stupidly. There's thievery and chaos and just all that stuff. Like, you're not going to stop that from happening. Right? How do you deal with it? How do you deal with the situation at hand? Are you prepared? Right? Are you prepared for banking collapse? Are you prepared, right, for stores to be overrun because food's getting very limited? Are you accepting of this possibility in your life? And then how are you going to conduct yourself inside of it? Are you expecting that and just that? That's going to be dangerous. Now you are conducting yourself in such a way that if that outcome doesn't show up, where everybody is running down to the grocery store and clearing out the shelves, because that's what you have prepared for, if that outcome doesn't come, what could you have been preparing for that would have done much better in your life? Right? I know now that there is really no better way of positioning yourself than to have the knowledge. When you have the understanding of the Cantillon effect, when you look at Triffin's dilemma, Gresham's law, the bullwhip effect, you look at these four economic theories, all the stories that you hear out there, they're reasonable. They're actually symptoms. Everything that you see are symptoms of either one or a combination of those four economic theories. Once you have internalized them, once you see them, you look out there and you'll be able to call them out as they're going down. And you'll be like, well, this is a sign of the Cantillon effect. You'll read through Twitter posts and X posts, sorry. You'll read through these articles and you'll be like, there's somebody describing Cantillon effect. There's somebody describing Triffin's dilemma. There's somebody describing the bullwhip effect. You will recognize these things as they are occurring. And most of the time, when you have a reason, they will have excuses and blame. And you will recognize it as that. No, you guys are causing this fear, uncertainty, and doubt because you simply just don't understand the economic forces that are playing out here. That's how it was easy for me to call out lumber. Lumber ran up to $1,700 per thousand as the Federal Reserve was going through massive money printing. Everybody, memes and jokes and videos and all kinds of people showing how the money printer from the Federal Reserve was causing lumber prices to go up. I was one of the lone voices out there saying, what are you all going to say when lumber prices go back down to their normal price? Nobody had any reason for it. I was the one person who said, don't fall for this. Don't fall for the money printer go burr causes lumber prices to go up, because you're not going to have any kind of excuse or understanding on why it dropped back down to its normal price. Boom. Uneducated Economist nailed it again. Right? And it's not me, and I'm not trying to brag it up that I am some super genius on it. I just happen to catch these speeches and wouldn't let them go. Like, they said it, and I'll be like, I'm going to remember you said that. And then months later goes down the road, I'll be like, ha ha, gotcha. Right? You said it. I remember. And here it is. And now you can't back away from it, because I am not going to let you go. And that's the reason that I have been able to develop and build this credible threat theory. Recognize it in real time as it's taking place out there within the economy. Watching these people pull their hair out and lose their mind over, what it is that the Trumpster is doing out there. And I'm thinking, gosh, guys, do you not recognize what it is that's happening here from all the things that I have said? I mean, if the central banking system literally said back in 2018 and even before that the goal was to have elevated inflation that was persistently too high, take a look around. Take a look at the comment section. All right? Tell me that inflation isn't persistently high. Exactly in line with what the Federal Reserve was hoping for. All right? And here it is. I love this channel. Simon helps the world each day. Well, thank you very much. And you guys can help me out by hitting that like button right now. We got 271 people watching with 72 likes. Hitting that like button will get the YouTube algorithm to grab this video, spread it around for more people to enjoy. And by going down and hitting the link down in the description to the school UE University, you will now have access to be able to get to the Follow the Money course that has the Triffin's Dilemma and Cantillon effect and all that stuff in there. But more importantly, you will then have the ability to go to the premium portion of that site and get the credible threat theory yourself. And this is the important part. All the information is there. Everything that I have used to develop the credible threat theory is now in one single location for you to go and access yourself. I will be continuing to refine and develop and build the credible threat theory course up, but it's now there available for you for all your abilities to then internalize the credible threat theory for yourself through the information that I used. Okay. And if you stick around with it, then I will guide you through the credible threat theory so that you can then see it as well as we do here on the Uneducated Economist. All right. The circus is fun to watch but economics and politics are two games played on the same board. Yeah, and this is what I find interesting about it. And once you see the Cantillon effect, then this starts to make a lot more sense, right? But I have the Cantillon effect right here. I carry Cantillon essay with me right here. And when you go and you look through the Cantillon essay, right at the very beginning, right, the foreword, this is what it says. And I'm not going to read too much into it. I just want to read you just a little bit, because this is the best best essay in the entire world. If you do not read anything else in the entire world on economics, read this essay. Read the 3 chapters, chapter 6, 7, and 8 in part 2 of this essay, the increase and decrease of money to the state. Again, if you don't read anything else in the history of the world when it comes to economics, read those 3 chapters. Right? Make your kids read those 3 chapters. Make all your friends and family and everybody you know read those 3 chapters. All right. It says here, following a century of neglect, William Stanley Hevons, in the first blush of discovery, proclaimed Cantillon essay the cradle of political economy. Subsequent growth and development of economic thought has not really alerted us to the subtleties of the of the appraisal. 'Cause, 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 A cradle holds new life, and there can be little doubt that the essay added to new life to the organized principles of economics. But, quote, political economy does not accurately describe the subject Cantillon addressed. Indeed, he scrupulously avoided political issues in order to concentrate at the mechanics of the 18th century economic life. He literally pushed politics out so that he could recognize the economic forces for what they were. The people who want to incorporate these two things together will never be able to recognize the economic forces because of it. And that's super important. Like, don't get me wrong, I love politics. There was a time in my life when I was very much into it, and I knew every single congressperson's name, and I knew all the bills and everything else that was going down through it, and I had no clue of what was happening within the economy. It wasn't until I let politics go that economics all of a sudden floated up and became much easier for me to deal with, right? Politics is a problem. It interferes with the ability to see it. He even says here, political economy does not accurately describe the subject Cantillon addressed. Indeed, he scrupulously avoided political issues in order to concentrate on the mechanics of the 18th century economic life. When confronted by the extraneous factors such as politics, Cantillon insisted that such considerations be put aside, so not to complicate our subject. All right. And see, now this is the thing that you have to look at. It's not a problem looking at politics. The problem is that when you use politics to basically blame or describe or use as the symptoms for the economic forces, then you are blocking out the economic forces because of the view of politics that you have taken. When you set politics aside, now you can recognize the economic forces for what they really are. And you can recognize the credible threat upon those economic forces. If you try to blend these two together, you'll be confused. You'll never see it. You don't get me wrong. You'll have a wonderful debating conversation that sounds very intelligent and articulated by many professionals out there in a way that sounds like it's very helpful and useful information, but it's not. It really isn't. To recognize the economic forces for what they are, I mean, the ones that have been described hundreds of years ago, and then also to understand how it is that the communications coming from the mainstream media then impact the people's behaviors, and then adding all that together can then give you a view that is much different. If you say that the politics are causing this, you will see it. You will find it, you will voice your opinion on it, and then you will find people who will debate you about that. But to recognize the economic forces and say, hey, this would have happened regardless of those people, that's very few and far between. Very few and far between. Everybody says, oh, the problem we face right now is because of the political mindset of the liberal politics or the conservative politics or whatever is going on out there. They will blame it in that fashion and then find the evidence of it. Recognize the evidence and then debate that evidence, never once ever seeing the underlying economic forces that are playing out causing the reality of the situation. But like for me, I just look back and say, well, it's the Cantillon effect. Right? And people are like, oh, well, we don't have living wage jobs because of the greedy corporations. And I'm like, yeah, that's true. And that's true. And all that's true, but the reason for it is because we had ever-increasing amounts of new money that poured into the system that drove out the domestic manufacturers, drove out ever-increasing amounts of foreign production, drove in ever-increasing amounts of foreign production, separating the rich from the poor, leaving us with no real position to have a working-class economy that is then going to have living wages to it. And now if you want to blame liberals on that, or greedy corporations, or just recognize it from the Cantillon essay, because this is what he described hundreds of years ago in chapters 6, 7, and 8, part 2 of the essay. I'm good at this, right? Like, the only reason why I'm as good as able to do this is really because of the audience. Coming out here and sharing these videos and sharing these ideas and the concepts that are happening within the economy and monetary policy and having the discussion here has really developed this. Like, you guys built it, you know, I mean, it was channeled through me, but it really was built off of this channel. And that's why I know it's real, right? Everybody else, it's so fakery. It's all misguided, misunderstood. this was really built, like, you think about it, we have so many minds working on this at the same time. It just happens to be channeled through me. Now, I don't know how many people recognize that, but I recognize it for what it is, and that's why I'm so adamant about it. It's because I know this is the truth. I know nobody else has touched on it the way that I have, and I have the evidence that I have left now for anybody to go and research and disprove. Go disprove it all, right? And if you don't want to pay for it, there's a 7-day free trial. Just go get the information. It's free. It's absolutely free. You got a 7-day free trial that you can go and get all the information. Just take it. Take it and do what you need to. All right. You should call this channel the Cantillon Effect. Maybe people will recognize it from now on. People recognize the Uneducated Economist. You know, it was so funny. Somebody was just like, I even saw in the comment section, it was just like, they were going on about, I don't know, talking about like how I missing it or something. I can't exactly remember. And then they went on and talked about how awesome Peter Schiff is. And so I sent them a link to the Peter Schiff interview that I had done with them a couple of years ago. It was awesome. Great dude. You know, had a great conversation with him. He gave me an excellent interview. It's not like I don't know who Peter Schiff is. He is probably the #1 most influential economist that I was when I was doing my study, I was following Peter Schiff most of the time. And so I really contribute a lot of what it is that I am now experiencing because of listening to Peter Schiff, right? But he's also a gold salesman, and I recognize that, and he's never going to give you any information that steers you away from the idea of buying gold. I'm a salesman too, you know, like I recognize the tactics, so I don't blame him for that. That's just who he is and what he's doing. I mean, it's his business, right? You can't blame him for that. But when I think about the information that I have gathered and what it is that I feel is appropriate and real, I don't necessarily try to push gold as the place that you need to be to protect yourself from everything out there. Is it a wonderful experience to have gold in your possession? Absolutely it is. I mean, I have been pushing it on this channel from the day one, but I also said it was an insurance policy against the third-party claim, and that you should understand that there are other positions out there to be in besides just that of gold. Honestly, what everyone should be doing, just buy gold and silver. I don't believe in that. I don't believe that. Peter Schiff is my favorite. Yeah, he's up there too. I mean, I can't, I can't give anybody else the credit as much as I can give Peter Schiff the credit for my understanding of the stuff that I do, right? And like, I know a lot of people like might look at like some of the things that I say and it was like, dude, you push back against. I'm not, right? I'm not trying to push back against it. I give Peter Schiff mad props and credit and everything, right? I mean, I can't think of anybody else literally who I could give that kind of props to for educating me. But I also recognize things in a different light now, you know? All right. Is separation going to speed up these 4 years, Trump, and then slow down with the Democrats? Yeah. I mean, if you want to sit around and think about it in that fashion, then most likely you're not going to be able to recognize what it is that the Federal Reserve is attempting to do with the neutral interest rate or anything that's going on with R-star. Like, these two things are going to be very, very, very difficult to look at and understand how it is that the Federal Reserve is conducting themselves in relation to it, because politics don't have anything to do with those two things. And if you want to look to politics, to the reasoning that the Federal Reserve is going to be adjusting rates, and you're missing out on the two components that they are actually looking at. And so as I try to share what it is that's happening with the Federal Reserve and their monetary policy, anytime I ever heard anybody say, what is it that the Federal Reserve should be doing with interest rates? My very next question is, where do you feel that the neutral interest rate would be? How do you feel the neutral interest rate is in relation to the Fed funds rate? How restrictive do you really feel? Do you think the inflation expectation is raising or lowering the neutral interest rate? This is a very important question. It doesn't have anything to do with the Democrats or Republicans, but it does have a lot to do with what it is that the Federal Reserve is going to do and how it is that you position yourself in accordance to it. Because if enough credible threats are out there, that raises the inflation expectation, it raises that neutral interest rate, it gets ever closer to the Fed funds rate, and it makes the economy far less restricted than anybody would give it consideration for. And then they wonder why it is that the rich are so damn rich. You ever think, maybe, that it has something to do with the things that I have been saying here? It doesn't have anything to do with the politics. It has to do with the economic forces that are at play. It has to do with the idea that the Federal Reserve was stuck at the lower bound of zero with no downward adjustment to monetary policy. That scared the hell out of them. They were desperate, and they didn't care who got the painful experience from it. They said that they were going to be experiencing pain. The people at the end of the line, the people with lost wages and incomes. Am I almost done here? Oh gosh, guys, I love rambling. I just love going off here on these things, but I got to go back to work because yes, I do have a real day job in which that I have to pay my bills with. I can't just cut it here on YouTube, but I am sharing the course with you guys. This is finally out. It's deployed for people to now go and research for free with a 7-day trial. There's a link down in the description. I encourage everybody to please go check out the course, help support the Uneducated Economist, build up your understanding and knowledge, and join one of the greatest communities out there when it comes to economics, because nobody, literally nobody, discusses the credible threat theory like we do. Uneducated Economist, you guys let me know.